You're listening to the Higher Attitudes Podcast. Inspiration to lift your soul. I'm grateful for gratitude. This is Tom, and I know that first statement sounds kind of corny, but as I thought about what I wanted to say about gratitude, I realized that I was just that grateful. That I was just that grateful for the practice of expressing gratitude. Okay, now for a moment of full disclosure. I haven't always taken time to notice and express gratitude, but I have changed. And I credit my good wife, who smiles so often that I know gratitude lives within her. It always has. It's not just me that notices her happy demeanor and uplifting smiles. I'm just the guy who gets most of the benefits of her gratitude by being around her so much. But even with her patience and positive ways, it took me a long time to begin practicing the art of gratitude for myself. I like to think about it sort of like a fuel gauge in a car, but only in reverse. You know how when you fill up your gas tank in your car, you get in the car and turn it on and watch the fuel gauge shoot up from empty all the way to full? In fact, the needle on my fuel gauge goes a bit past the full mark right after I fill up. It feels good to drive around right after you fill up, doesn't it? Because the needle doesn't seem to move like it should. It stays at the full mark longer than it stays at, say, the half a tank mark. And whoa, when it goes below half, that gauge seems to drop like a rock in a pond. Well, my practice of gratitude is kind of like this, except, like I said, it's in reverse. My gratitude was riding close to empty way too often. And, like the opposite of my fuel gauge, my gratitude gauge would stay right near empty even when I took time to express gratitude when I prayed. I'll admit that my gratitude during prayer was often the kind of gratitude that was more obedient than heartfelt. But then something changed, slowly at first. I noticed that if I took time to pause and enjoy how gratitude felt as I prayed, that the Spirit of God would accompany that feeling of gratitude, telling me that the blessing I was grateful for was specifically prepared for me by a loving Heavenly Father. My gauge began to move up a little. As I remembered to feel gratitude instead of just list off items I was grateful for, the needle kept creeping up. I started noticing how my wife was friendly to everyone. She was not weighed down with her own worries to the point where she would walk around thinking about them constantly. More full disclosure. That's more my style. And so, when she checked out at the grocery store, she would ask the cashier how their day was going. And then she would keep asking questions about what they had planned for the weekend or what they enjoyed doing. Now, let me say, my wife is a natural people person, and so it doesn't bother her in the least to ask these questions of a perfect stranger. But for me, when I was with her at the checkout, an alarm would go off in my head. It sounded something like this. Personal space breached. Personal space breached. Personal space breached. While I was busy crawling out of my skin, the cashier would often smile and respond and start telling my wife about their hobbies and their weekend plans. Wow! I had to try this, I thought. I started by simply saying thank you more. Then I started using my wife's technique, and I would use the person's name if they had a name tag on. It felt like cheating. I mean, I knew the person knew I got their name from their name tag, but it didn't matter. They loved it. Okay, so I'm still not as natural at this as my sweet wife, but I'm hooked. And you know what? This simple practice started moving my gratitude gauge up, up, up. Then I began experimenting with a gratitude journal. More on that in a future show, I assure you. And then I found that my prayers changed again. I began pausing as I prayed for blessings because I was feeling the Spirit making me aware of God's never-ending work to bless His children. I noticed often that what I was praying for was already present in my life, and I was worrying about it continuing. Or I would realize that God had already started preparing the way for me to receive something I desired. It was humbling to realize that God was way ahead of me. I shouldn't have been surprised. After all, King Benjamin warns us in the book of Mosiah that we can't get ahead of God when it comes to blessings and obedience. As I began noticing gratitude welling up within me, my worries were pushed aside. Important things didn't get forgotten. I learned to just handle them and move on. The unnecessary stress and worry, however, just sort of drowned in gratitude as my tank filled up. Now I feel like my gratitude tank is almost always full or near full. And if I practice the simple art of gratitude in ways that seem counterintuitive, my needle often hits the top of the gauge and I find myself emotionally asking God how He can be so good to me. What's the moral of today's gas tank metaphor? Simply this: take just a little time to say thank you more, even if you don't feel that grateful at first. Say hello and thank you to people who are normally ignored. Pause to feel gratitude when you pray instead of compiling a list each time. Start a gratitude journal. Maybe read a book on gratitude. You can check the show notes for a list of a few my wife recommends. You might also try studying gratitude in the scriptures. Just take a bit more time to explore gratitude. If your gratitude tank feels a little low, you'll see it rise as you begin to recognize more and more that despite your struggles and challenges, and even your full-on trials in life, you are more blessed than you think. It won't be long before you too feel grateful for learning the subtle art of gratitude. Thank you for listening. We'd love to have you join us on Facebook at facebook.com/higherattitudes. Do you have an uplifting thought to share? Why not join our Facebook discussion group? Visit the group at facebook.com/groups/higherattitudes to request membership. If you'd like to leave a question about a challenge you're facing, or if you'd like to share a thought about how you've overcome negativity, call 719-301-0303 and record your question or comment. Please note that carrier rates may apply. Again, call 719-301-0303 to leave a question or comment. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we look forward to you joining us for the next episode of the Higher Attitudes podcast. Please remember that the advice offered in this show is intended for informational purposes only. Please read our full disclaimer in the show notes.